It's fracking and rapping. Classic style, modern design. I'm Chris Cooper here with Alex and Flizzo. Last week we learned to create less shocking content. Today I'm going to be talking about weapon systems and battle tactics. Maybe you've heard the money printer goes burr or a machine gun goes burr. The MK-19 or Mark 19 is an automatic grenade launcher and it doesn't go burr. Mark 19 goes thump, 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 boom, boom, boom. Run, but you know you can't hide. Each round will explode up to 5 meters. Belt-fed ammo comes through the side. Go cyclic, shoot as much as you try. Blocks you blown, yeah, bombs rain from the sky. All right, regular rapping, you must choose one.
I guess it's rapping that causes wrecking. Yeah. How long is 5 meters?
It's 5 meters.
About 15 feet.
Yeah, I am definitely not like on the metric
meters a yard. But I did want to do a little wrecking on that rap and break down the bars. So each meter explodes up to 5. That means it has an unlife radius of 5 meters and an injury radius of 10 meters. So the way grenades work is similar to the Ron White joke on hurricanes. The danger isn't that the wind is blowing, but what the wind is blowing. And the explosion throws shrapnel, little bits of metal, and some grenades are filled with little metal beads, like a pomegranate grenade, and that provides a little extra kick.
Is that like an actual origin of where the word grenade comes from?
I assume so. In French is apple, so maybe apple grenade is what pomegranate means?
I know pomegranates existed back in like the Greek, Roman, Odyssey times and everything like that. So,
yeah, people have said that the fruit that Adam and Eve bite from is supposedly a pomegranate, but
I'm not 100% sure. But I think pomegranates is like the fruit of Hades, or has something to do with Hades as like
something with
a whole.
Persephone,
like sponsored by Hades.
They only grow in Hades. Alex had asked about this grenade I have in the back if it was real. It is not. It's a training grenade, so there's a little hole you put in, not a real explosive, but just sort of like a firework, and it just lets out a little poof of smoke, but you can still like get the effect of pulling the pin, and this little bit falls off, but you could see that. So this is not a modern grenade. The modern grenade is just a round circle, and like I said, it can have metal beads. But this outside would break apart and cause the shrapnel that I had talked about. And in a Mark 19, they shoot 40 millimeter rounds, and they are armed by spinning, and it takes about 500 spins for it to actually arm and then detonate, and that works out to be about 10 meters, so you can't shoot yourself in the foot and blow up. That's why it does that.
Good. I heard the best way to avoid being fire grenade is lying down flat with your feet towards the shrapnel part. So like it minimizes the amount of your body that could be hit.
Yeah.
Checks out.
And also not being anywhere near it is also good.
Well, yeah, I mean
that's good advice. Another thing we had to mentally prepare for is if a grenade was ever thrown in your truck, then you might jump on it, or you just kick it into the seat where the interpreter is, so he blocks it because he's not American, so barely even human, right?
Now,
why do you got the windows down?
Did they ever go over the helmet the strategy with that?
Putting the helmet on it?
Yeah, it seems like that wouldn't work, but also it could, but probably not.
It probably slows it down.
It's going to take some of the force, but I feel like...
But I guess also you're on top of your helmet as well. Like, I thought the logic was you're also holding the helmet in place. So
if you got on top of your helmet, I think it would be helpful. The other thing I mentioned, go cyclic, shoot as much as you try. Cyclic is a rate of fire where you hold down the trigger. With a machine gun, you wouldn't do this unless you were in dire circumstance. The Mark 19 can go cyclic anytime because it is spring-powered, while most weapons are gas-powered, recoil-operated, meaning when a round is fired, the gunpowder explosion pushes the bullet forward and a buffer assembly backward. A spring returns that assembly forward again, and that process reloads the next round. All that hot air causes the barrel to literally melt, and it'll droop as you're shooting, and you're firing 600 to 800 rounds per minute, which is the cyclic rate of fire for machine guns.
They have a pill for that barrel droop.
Bravo.
It's moving on. It's time for our first sponsor, Blue Chew.
Time for our first reading, Shakespeare. I'm reading A Midsummer Night's Dream again, looking for a monologue I'd like to memorize. And there was an exchange between two fairies that my wife enjoyed, so I figured I'd share it this week. The characters are Hermia and Helena. Hermia is chased by Demetrius, though she loves him not. Helena chases Demetrius, though he loves her not. Here's the exchange from Act 1, Scene 1. Starting with Hermia, then Helena will be replying and back and forth. Hermia, I frown upon him, yet he loves me still. Oh, that your frowns would teach my smiles such skill. I give him curses, yet he gives me love. Oh, that my prayers could such affection move. The more I hate, the more he follows me. The more I love, the more he hateth me. His folly, Helena, is no fault of mine. None but your beauty, would that fault were mine. You guys tracking on that?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like it'd be one to read to your baby.
No, but it was nice to have the the smile still teach me such skill. There's a little rhyming, but also going back and forth of good, bad, and such. So it was a little fun.
Moving it's the sort of thing people would call a love triangle, even though it's not a triangle.
Yes, and in the play, I believe Puck creates a love pentagon with those three characters and then two humans.
So what are they, just going through the motions? Like, they don't really...
That's what it sounded like.
They're not really into it, but they're like, yeah, I'll try it.
What do you mean, in the love pentagon?
Because it says one's chasing the other but doesn't really want to, and the other's chasing the other but doesn't really want to. So they're just doing it to do it for no reason.
Well, each person is chasing who they love, but they're just not getting it reciprocated.
Oh, okay. I guess I heard that wrong then.
No, okay. Well, into the meat and
potatoes. Like love stalking.
Muhammad Ali had a quote, grass grows, birds fly, I beat people up. For whatever reason, I love fighting, and it's not to win anything with it. I grew up with 3 older brothers, which means I got beat up and pushed around for being a little kid. In my young teens, I once asked my mom to open a jar, and when she did, I felt like the weakest thing on earth. This created a fire in me to get better.
Yeah, I mean...
That was a hard period. I don't know how we're supposed to...
It sounded like you were going to go a little bit further with that. But
yeah, like it sounded like he was going to like...
I will continue. The Ben, our big brother, who would regularly practice MMA moves on me, and probably anyone who was willing to wrestle him, I spent a lot of time in the guard being squished by someone that was potentially twice my weight. Currently, I'm at least 200 pounds, and that translates to me being comfortable going against a 400-pound opponent. Though in that scenario, I would rely on my cardio to beat his.
I don't know. If you went up against a 400-pound opponent that had actual skills, that would be frightening. Mm-hmm. Like that, if they relied on skill, not their weight, they would be horrifying because they'd be like a mountain.
How do you think they would get skilled and still be at that weight? Because that's the thing. I mean, like Butterbean, I think of. Well, yeah.
So if you're like 6 foot 8,
if you're 7'2",
it was the big show. Then but that's why I'm saying it's cardio. I just run around and
but if you're 5'10", 400 pounds, then your cardio is going to be your.
Gosh, if you're under 6'2" and over 350, like you're probably round.
And even if it was a super muscular person, if you're
out the window.
But if you're like grappling jiu-jitsu style for long enough, those muscles are going to be exhausted after 2 minutes. I mean,
but also if you have that much muscle, you're not going to be able to like close that gap. Like your muscles will get in their own way.
Which is the thing the Ben had given me with all that squishing, is that I can be squished and balled up now, and I'll still find a way to breathe.
I mean, then me and you would fight with weapons. We had a number of Bakkens and...
I have a scar from when you shot me with it was a nerd. It was the candy.
It was a nerd in an air rifle.
Yeah, in a BB gun.
Yeah,
I mean, it's better than when we were shooting pickup sticks.
Well, yeah, it was lucky because minutes before we were loading pickup sticks into the air rifle and shooting. And so I have a painting that has a hole in it from a pickup stick. And then Alex decided to load the BB. I don't know if you were like, hey, Chris, bang. Or you just, what the turn of events. But also our sister was there. So thankfully it was me, not her.
Well, I mean, we got in trouble.
We did?
But that the other,
how they
I mean, I
catch
did
us.
at least.
I mean, that makes sense.
But
you did shoot your brother.
I know the other time that I hurt Chris, I was walking through the living room once and he jumped on my back, and so I did that judo throw and I threw him onto the couch, and it was like, oh, that was awesome. So we made a game out of it. And then it's like the 8th, 9th, or 10th time, like after I've thrown him so many times, I didn't throw him far enough, and he landed on his wrist on the edge of the couch and like broke his wrist. And our parents weren't home at the time.
Yeah, that
and
sounds
then Chris
classic
went upstairs
boys.
and laid in his bed, and then when mom and dad came home, it's like, you might want to check on Chris.
Yeah, I'm doing all right now. I'd asked the Ben where his joy for fighting came from, because my beginning starts with his beginning, and he traced it through professional wrestling and catch wrestling, which has its roots as a traveling circus act. He said something interesting, that no one wants to be a carny, that life chooses you. I said before that strong people tend to have a rough upbringing, and it's not a choice. Alex, you can probably go into this more than me, since I was younger when we left the rough neighborhood, but we were getting into fights regularly, even though our family was pretty much its own community. For example, we had a little patch of dirt behind our house our dad built a playground on, and people would argue with us that it was a public park and not our backyard.
There was this one time out front of the house, this one kid started something with us, and he's like, go home. And so I took one step back onto the grass, went, yep, I'm home now. Now you leave. And then like he was mouthing off. I was like, whatever. And I started to turn around, and then all of a sudden Chris spears this kid, like full tackled him into like a stop sign pole. And I was like, what the heck? And then like the kid drops a rock, and Chris was like, yeah, he was gonna throw a rock at your face. And I was like, oh, all right then. And then the kid got up and ran.
And there's a reverse of that, when some kid was about to, our neighbor's younger brother was going to throw
at you.
Yeah, and you threw like a little BB rock at him, and he ran away crying.
Hey, I think I got him like right between the shoulders. Like he got, and then they yelled at us. They're like, oh, you heard us. I was like, you threw a rock bigger than his head. If Chris was like one step far forward, you would have him. And like I hit you with a pebble. Like, no.
Flizzo, you have a background in Greco-Roman wrestling and football. Do you remember what drew you into these combat simulating sports?
Well, football, just growing up watching football, playing football, like, playing in the street. Just love the fact that it's using brute force with tactics. So it's always equated to like a chess match. Even though people who aren't familiar with football just kind of assume it's just running and hitting people, which it is. Mm-hmm. But it's also strategy and putting your best move against their best strategy. So always
wrestling's a lot of that too, of strategizing against each other.
Yeah, wrestling, on the other hand, even though in certain aspects it's a team sport, it's all to the individual. So it's your training, your experience versus their training, their experience. How I got into it was just basically I got cut for the basketball team.
Oh,
and
they're at the same season.
Coaches, they're the same season. My football coaches were also the wrestling coaches, and they said you would do well in wrestling, so how don't you just do wrestling instead of not doing anything? So I did that.
I feel like that school had very few coaches then.
No, it was just was because this is my freshman year, so the freshman football coaches were also was it one or two? One of them was the wrestling coach, which
they all multi-coached apparently.
I mean, a lot of stuff translates over, especially like wrestling. Certain takedowns help with tackling and stuff like that. So
the spear, for example,
yeah,
I mean, you could be shooting wrestling style, or tackling.
Yeah, double leg takedown definitely helped me more on the football field, learning that. And I guess that technique translated better with me wrestling. So that was like my number one takedown move, was the double leg takedown. The aspect of wrestling, though, I was a big like WWF fan or WWE fan growing up. So I did enjoy watching the wrestling. And even though that style of wrestling is far different than
Oh yeah,
than what you get, but just putting out all of your effort to defeat an opponent, I loved it. I loved doing it. Like I loved wrestling and challenging yourself, and it was like a battle. That it was just you versus this person, and that's it. And
so enjoying combat is similar to my joy in arguing. Whenever you hear me voice an opinion, it's not my own. I'm trying to make the weaker argument the stronger, to challenge myself, and that's fun. Anytime I'm not reading the Bible out loud, those words are likely to be false.
So I do that a lot. I'll do
yeah, it makes sense.
Devil's advocate part of that challenge, or whatever.
Yeah. As Ye said, you're advocating for the devil, so that's also tricky.
Someone will come to me with something, and I'll just automatically argue the other side, whether I agree with them or not, just to either strengthen their argument or just have it clearly be, hey, this is nonsense. It's also almost like a reflex. Mm-hmm. So if somebody's like, oh, this person did this, I'm like, well, was it because you were acting a certain way? Or was it because of this? Was it because of that?
I've even had it when I'm in an argument with someone and then I win and they're giving up. And so I create an argument for them. Like, no, this is what you should say to pick apart my argument so that it can continue. Which is basically what this show is just me arguing with myself in my head all week, and then I present it to you guys.
Well, I like it that way of thinking, though, because when you actually have your own argument, you've already gone against your argument already. So when you do present it out, then you're like, all right, I know what the weak points are. So you strengthen the weak points and then present it better.
And this is known as the Socratic dialogue, that going back and forth. Before we get to Alex's Rec of the Week, please take a moment to subscribe or follow us on whatever platform you're listening. Now, to Alex's Rec of the Week. What have you got for
us? So the thing that is the most bothering me currently is how in mainstream video games there seems to be a lot of backtracking, because I guess someone somewhere decided that was a good thing, but the fact that everything does it is the most annoying, like, trope. I'm currently playing Paper Mario 1,000 Year Door. It's a 20-year-old game. It originally came out on the GameCube, but now is remastered for the Switch.
But I think backtracking is always, along with like grinding up levels, just to pad out. I don't mind grinding. Time.
Like that's just kind of how I play games. Is like I like to just have repetitive battles and like, oh, now I'm stronger, and that feels accomplished. Backtracking doesn't help me feel accomplished. It's like, oh, cool, you finished that chapter. Now go to the hometown and do nothing, or talk to the same guy you've talked to 6 times already, and he's gonna tell you something different this time, and then. Like, it's just like,
fast travel?
This seems so there's no fast travel. Well, there is after you beat a stage. So, like, after you beat a chapter, you can go back to that chapter, but you can't go back home.
I'm not that familiar with gaming. I mean, I game, but, like, not often. What is backtracking exactly?
So, in the case of Mario, there's a hub town, and then, like, you can go to the right to go to the one town, and then like when you come back town, you have to go down south to go to the next town. So every chapter you have to go back to the main hub for no reason, just to talk to the same one character. I already walked this way, and now I have to walk back this exact same path. And so it's
like after everything, you have to go to home base kind of deal.
Well, yeah, like in this case, because it's a 2D side scroller, you walk to the right and fight the boss, and now you have to walk back to the left through the whole same stage that you just walked through. And it's like, why? Why are you making me do any of this? Like, it's so pointless.
Okay.
And then it's after every chapter, really so it's like,
You
Yeah,
guys
and it's like,
probably
oh,
aren't familiar with the book Flatland, are you?
I read
Yeah.
that for high school.
Oh, okay. Well, there's
Yeah.
Flizzo would probably be familiar with the episode of Futurama where there is
Oh yeah.
some sort of spiral thing, but yeah, they go to a 2D world, and so it's like you can't in a 2D world you can't walk past something; you have to go over it, and that's very frustrating in Paper Mario because it is a flat land.
Well, yeah, and then I mean, I played other games that have the same sort of backtracking that like I also just recently played Little Kitty Big City, which is a very
It's a
small
fun name.
indie game, but it's you legit are a cat. You have like right trigger to swipe your right hand, left trigger to swipe your left hand, A jumps like you have to like go find fish and like there's like little side missions you have to do. But even though it takes place in like 6 blocks, you don't completely feel like you're like walking the same block because there's NPC civilians and like nothing's required of you other than like a small task. There's other like 100% the game tasks that I felt got a little tedious at the end because it's like I had to have 50 people take my picture, which gets a very annoying because you have to sit down in front of them and hit the meow button until they take your picture. But like that was just because I wanted to 100% the game. But I felt that game was fun and I didn't feel like I was backtracking.
Games are weird.
You know what's a game that I want to play, but I hear that it's crazy. That No Man's Sky, where they computer
That game
generate
has come so
worlds.
far.
Yeah, that's the one that people always talk about. That it had all these promises, came out, and was lackluster, but they ended up fixing it to where it now actually matches that. But yeah, it
I know
sounds cool.
when I played it when it first released, one of the personal goals I gave myself was learning the space language. Like, because every planet has its own language, and like as you wander the planet, you find tombs, and then you can find books, and that will teach you a word in every book. And I found like 80 words in one planet. I was like, "Yep, I'm just learning this pointless language."
So why do you make those goals but not learn real life language? Because I had like for myself had thought like, oh, I want to learn Tolkien's lore, but then I was like, well, I'll just learn humans lore and read the Bible. Like that's our lore.
I guess I don't find interest in real things. I guess like because it's like, all right, this is a thing that could be useful, but it's not useful for me. Being
So
bilingual wouldn't benefit me because
It
I
would
don't want
more
how
to.
would
so
that
than
not
No Man's
benefit
Sky.
you? So
It just
learning a
translates
language
that
in No
into
Man's Sky
English.
would be better than learning Spanish.
You could
That's all.
travel to these real places and there would be people or even like there's reasons to learn another language. Flizzo, are you prepared to deliver your this week in history?
Yeah, let's go with this week in history. We'll go back all the way to 1922.
Oof.
1922 was when
Over
President
100.
William Howard Taft dedicated the Lincoln Memorial on the Washington Mall. He was actually president then. He was actually Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, which is, I think he's the only president to ever become a Chief Justice on the Supreme Court, which is a unique feat.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Lincoln Memorial, it was commissioned, I think, 2 years after Lincoln's assassination, and it just took forever to get funding and get plans. So it was eventually built and debuted in 1922.
This week. Wow. That's
This
pretty
week,
cool. Well,
unless the source I was using is wrong.
I mean that's history for you. You never know about the sources, and of course it's written by the victors. Perhaps the Lincoln Memorial was unveiled in 1622. We'll never know. On to the
But when
Bible.
did it get switched to a monkey?
After the humans have blown up their civilization.
That's
Was
the Mark
that like,
Wahlberg one that no one watches because it's very bad.
yeah, but is it that it was Earth and they just changed
No,
the
no, no.
Lincoln
In
Memorial?
the Mark
Or
Wahlberg
was it
one,
just a
it's
different?
bad. It's a different planet because it's not even like ape Abraham Lincoln. It's like, oh, this was this ape, and it was like Isaiah, and you're like, wait, why did he Abraham? Like, it's not
Do
that
they
just
call
apes
him
became people.
Abraham Lincoln?
I wish that would have made the end of that movie better.
The movie would be worth it then. For today's Bible reading,
Yes.
I want to send the message given to God's plan. I'll be reading Matthew 24 through 27 and 32 through 34, skipping some verses for brevity's sake. Here is the reading. No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body, what ye shall put on. For your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need of all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. So, Alex, I thought you would like the take no thought for the morrow part.
That's how I live my life. Quarter mile at a time.
Which would be about
10 seconds or less. Free.
That's good for you.
I mean, like, I don't know how you would measure quarter miles in thought, but it's just.
I mean, for some people, if for a 100-meter sprinter, a quarter mile at a time would be a long distance.
I think for anybody,
that would require me to know how many meters in a mile.
1,600 in a mile, so a quarter would be 400.
Okay, then yeah, that would.
See, this is why we do the 24. 24 is back this week, by the way.
Yeah, but
one
the
lap
24
around
doesn't
a standard
do
track.
imperial and metric and.
But it's
one lap around
conversion.
a track is a quarter mile.
Yeah, but I mean, but you ever been like driving somewhere and you're like, you look at the mile signs and you're like, wow, a quarter mile seems to be like a lot in a straight line, and you're like, that's a lot of space
for a human. Yeah.
If you're like traversing that with your feet. If you're driving in a car, that's not that hard.
I mean, I don't live my life in a car. I'm not an Autobot.
If only we could be. Another important part is no man can serve two masters. Even outside of God, if you are distracted, you'll likely fumble everything. So focus on the task at hand.
Fun fact, people used to use that verse so you wouldn't get another job.
Another company. Yeah.
That sounds fun.
But, and the reply, making the weaker argument the stronger should be like, I know, I don't want to be at this one anymore. That's why I'm looking for a new job. So, yes, you're the one that I despise.
Yeah, there's a reason I'm getting other employment. It's because of you.
So I'm sharing a screen of a sector sketch from my FM. Well, I know it as FM 7-8. Just like we discussed, they changed the name of Fort Benning. They've changed the numbers. It's now FM 3-21.8. The infantry rifle platoon and squad. I don't know. You'd have to ask somebody that writes these sorts of books. Okay. But what I want to show with the sector sketch was mostly these interlocking sectors of fire. There'll be these arrows coming from little squares that represent people. You'll see things like MG, meaning machine gun, SAW, which is technically a machine gun as well, squad, automatic weapon. On the far right and left is the javelin, which is like a missile. Those have the furthest range. I think that's why they're on the outskirts. But the point is interlocking sectors of fire. You have each person next to the other, and they interlocked so that you can cover your buddy if anything happens. Now I'll stop sharing. Another point
you have to get your own field manual, so
yeah, I have to go
and study it.
Another point I wanted to talk about was talking the guns. So these are my battle tactics. You have the interlocking sectors of fire. So this way the guns will talk where one gun fires while the other rests or reloads to seem like constant fire. So boop, 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 reloading, boop, 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 up, boop, 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 boop. And so communication is key. That's the type of thing that the gunners are also communicating with each other. Like I said, reloading when you're reloading. And I said that they might be resting. So I said cyclic is when you're just holding down the trigger, but we'd also train at different rates of fire so that you don't melt your barrel, because then your weapon would be down in the first minute and you'd be out of ammo. All your enemy has to do is take cover for 1 minute and then they could just walk up to you freely.
That would be no good. Then you have to throw grenades at them.
Yeah, or doop, 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 doop. That's you can also make that noise with the 203 as the individual grenade launcher. Continuing my tactics, 5 or 4-man teams bounding is another way that you're covering each other. One team moves while the other pulls security. Even when you're retreating, you do the same thing. One team moves and then the other is pulling security for them. And you would communicate by saying things we learned, like, so you're laying down in the prone, pulling security, and then it's your time to move. Shout, moving, and you get up. In your head, at least, you're saying, I'm up, they see me, I'm down. And so that's how you know to be quick about it. You're not just running a quarter mile at a time because they see you, and then they can just get a beat on you.
So when you're saying moving, the person covering you, they don't acknowledge that first?
I think probably the squad leader, his team is going to move first. So he announces moving, or maybe he'd move to the other team to let them know we're about to move. So his team moves, and then once they get down, they might say something like clear. That's when the other team knows that they're good to move. And that would be...
So you're basically getting down after you pass the other platoon. So that way, like, because you're starting behind them, so you acknowledge that you're about to move, and then once they see you, you can go prone, and then the other people would yell moving, go past you, prone. So it's basically like taking a step, but like
and you
in a giant
and
form.
you announce when you're prepared to start pulling security as well, so that they know to move. My last tactic is that we only engage when we have a 3-to-1 advantage. That means like you have 3 troops versus 1 enemy. And you might win with less, but there will be unnecessary casualties. Remember that you need to explain to those families, your chain of command, and yourself why John Rambo felt it necessary to take the risk. And that's why we do 3-to-1.
I mean, that's actually the best way to play the game Risk, though. Because the more troops you have, you can roll 3 dice, and if the other person you're fighting is only rolling 1 die, it takes your highest against their highest, so you have a much greater chance of winning.
That is how the U.S. military does his tactics.
And if we ever get
a game of Risk,
so I guess
Risk
is a really good game then.
If we ever get into a podcast brawl, we can only fight one host, the 3 of us.
That'd be a hard thing to find, a single host podcast.
Well, there was my old one, so there's got to be somebody. I'm sure there's a bunch.
So it's like somehow you're fighting yourself.
Well, we'll only take on streamers then. They're usually only in the singles. But
podcasters versus streamers.
Yeah, you'd watch that show, right, listener? Anyone can fire a gun. In fact, the challenge is being in enemy territory and not going off over every broken twig. My platoon was hit by an IED and nobody opened fired. Shout out to my 50 cal gunner, Frank the Tank. That's not his real name.
Wait,
what?
Like, was that his real nickname at least?
Yeah.
Would you just make up a nickname on the spot right now? Like...
that was his real nickname, I guess. But it's also
okay.
It might be from Old School. I think Will Ferrell was Frank the Tank.
Will Ferrell's character was Frank the Tank.
But he had a lot less combat experience in that movie and in real life.
I mean, that we know of. His backstory could have been that he was a war veteran and they just didn't cover it for that movie.
Here's the 24 card. The numbers are 1, 1, 4, and 7.
I think I got it.
Yeah?
I'm probably
wrong. What do you got?
1 minus 7, 6. And then 6 times 1 is also 6. Then 6 times 4. And then we got the number.
That sounds good. A method
To be pedantic, though, you did say 1 minus 7, which would be negative 6.
Okay,
oh,
7
wow.
minus 1.
Alex is getting pedantic on us.
1 from 7. How about
that? I mean, I'm willing to bet we're going to get to like a 3-star 24 where we're going to need like 2 negative numbers to times them together to get a positive.
That would be fun. There's also...
No, that would not be fun.
Like, even my pack is just the starter pack. So after we finish this set, we can go on to the next one. And we'll be doing quadratic equations in our heads.
Humanity instead.
Yeah.
That's all I've got for today. Remember, you will become who you are. Stay on the path and have hope. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a good day. Goodbye.
Adios.
Deuces.